What's good, fishing fam? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to beautiful Hochatown, Oklahoma, and Mountain Fork Brewery. Today, Brewmaster Extraordinaire Johan and his assistant Sam Nesbitt are going to give us an inside look here at MFB so we can see what makes him one of the best in the game. Now, let's dive right into the content. Come on.
So this is what's called a counter pressure filler. And so a lot of times you'll see companies that have the Goose and now there's a Monkey brand. But what the problem with those is they allow oxygen into your package. And the human palate can detect it at 100 parts per billion is about the normal person. Somebody that's trained and you can get down into 20 parts per billion, a good palate person, like Cicerones and, sommeliers and stuff. So the difference with this being counter pressure is it'll hold about 20 gallons of beer, and then we have a carbon dioxide holding that head pressure just like you would in your tanks. And so the whole goal in packaging in beer is the least amount of shuffling you can do your beer from point A to point B, the better your package will be. So beer likes to be fondled the whole way, and if it ain't treated nicely, it will foam out, it will get mad if it's not cold. Like, you have to treat beer more delicately than any other finicky thing on the market. And so canning beer does not want to be canned at all. So the best way to do it though is under counter pressure, just like it's in the bright tank. So you want to trick it into even thinking it moved from the bright tank. So the goal is it gets in here, and then it goes, and this is a 12 head filler, and then we've got a single head seamer that has, it's a single seamer with 4 heads, correction. However, the idea is once it goes, these pedestals rise up on pneumatic, and once they raise up with that air pressure, they seal up under a gasket and no oxygen is getting back in there. So the old adage, whenever you're at a bar filling a growler, you always fill on foam. Yeah. So when these things come off, that foam is your CO2 blanket, and then it gets a little bit more CO2, and then it gets a little more CO2, and then finally that lid gets put on, and then it seams with a 4-head. So you've got 2 heads doing one option, which is rolling the can lid around it, and then you've got 2 other heads smashing that roll in, so you get a seam that can get hot, which we don't ever want beer to get hot, but it needs to be able to get hot so it won't blow up in your car because you forgot about it because you got drunk the night before and there's still beer in your can. So, c'est la vie. And it goes down the rest of the line, it gets rinsed, and then it gets labeled. Our cans are really nice because they are what's called a painted can. So instead of a bright boy can, which is industry standard, we get a painted can, and we put our logo, our name, and our website around the top. But this allows us to do clear labels so that the cans look more professional from everything else on the market.
Yeah. So it goes top to bottom. It not just, most of them usually stop at that edge.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool.
And so that painted can is not that much more expensive, and it really helps separate us from the market. And like we said earlier, we have our AP contract, and you really aren't able to tell the difference between the two, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mentioned earlier about the Yakima, when we come down for our tours and stuff, we kind of use this as our staging area for tours. So we have used Willamette Valley in the hops in the past, but this is Hang'em High hops that I mentioned out of Michigan. Yeah. They're a really great company. And so we kind of try to incorporate that into everybody when they do their tours. When they come down, they see all of the different Breeze grain that's available. Somebody's not made it pretty. But we've won different accolades and different awards. Again, I'm a Breeze fanboy, like I said, and some of the malts are really fun that people don't know about, like smoked malts and dark malts.
Got all the flavors. Dark chocolate.
Do you ever eat like sour stuff?
Oh yeah.
So do you ever heard of something called acidulated malt?
Yeah.
Hold out your hand there. So chew that in and kind of hold it like a curd in your mouth, like you would sunflower seeds.
Right.
Yeah. And so this malt is from Germany. It's one of the few non-American malts we do. So when you chew that, you're going to get this sour thing going on. That's a lactic acid. And that lactic acid is actually used in a lot of food ingredients to create that vibe. So you're getting a kind of a sour, funky going on. And so when that grain is malted and sent through its process, it actually is layered with more lactic acid, and it helps. It's called acidulated. So water chemistry back in the days, super nerd comment, nerd alert. However, the Reinheitsgebot back in Germany said that you can only have 4 things, and initially it was only 3 because they didn't know about yeast. They couldn't add chemical stuff. So the way they got around that was being able to control their pH in their water was using acidulated malt. And it helps actually add different taste profiles to the beer too. Some brewers will just use citric acid or they'll use liquid lactic. But I prefer here, especially, we're always trying to find that more natural, less chemical, you know, what it's supposed to be, you know, grain to glass.
Right. That's awesome.
So we're always looking for those fun things. You a barbecue guy?
Oh, yeah.
Most beer guys are, so give that a whiff. You can taste it too if you want.
God. Yeah.
So get a little. So this one is one of my favorites.
Amazing.
So the malt palette, you know, is really diverse. You know, this is a really cool thing that Breeze came out with about 3 years ago, maybe 4. But it's all made out of grains, and they're dark grains, they're lighter grains. You know, their thing is malt to masterpiece, and ours is always grain to glass. So they took that grain to glass thing and made a piece of artwork out of it. All the different malts that they make, you know, that help make beer what it can be. So, like I said, I've been to Bree's house. I really enjoy it. You know, all the fun different things you can do with it, and like you taste, it's crazy.
That's insane.
So, and then we got one of our barrel staves from one of the barrels we had aged in, just kind of to people to see how thick a barrel is and that char that's on it. They usually get asked, if you pop in here, we've got these flags when the bartenders come down. What you'll see in a minute is we've got a keg system in our barrel room. But people always ask, well, why is that flag those colors and stuff? I'm like, those are all the different colors of our beers. So you've got that 259 Pale, our Three Rivers, our Snake, our Hocheweizen, our Light, our Jackalope, our Rooster, our Timber Creek, our Crumpet, and our MFB. And then the upside down bottle, because we are independent and small. And then you kind of can't see it as well, but there's a little heart on the Oklahoma. And that shows where we are in Broken Bow. It's kind of cool about the logo, since it's big enough for you to kind of see. The eagle is on top of our logo because we're one of the few places that eagles will come to roost. And at this lake, when an eagle makes a nest, they make it for life. So every time they come back, they'll come back to those nests. And we actually have part of the wildlife team up here has cameras up there, and it's a natural study preserve for people. The mountains are the Kaimishi Mountains. We've got the Ouachita Forest Range. I've always wanted a river in there for our rivers, but one of these days, we're not quite Deschutes. Deschutes is that river going through it. But and then if you look real close, you kind of see there's a hidden thing there on the mountain on the right.
Oh, yeah. Squatch.
So that is the birthplace here. Is Ouachita Forest is the birthplace of the legend. The whole idea was there's maybe a land bridge or something that came down from Iceland, you know, and then this Native American saw a big guy, bearded, long hair, and didn't know what to think of that. So, you know.
So you started making beer?
You know, we found good water. Why not make beer?
Heck yeah, man.
So, but then again, Sneaky Snake's our flagship. So we have these made into cans and stickers. And you can see him again, little guy hiding out now that you know he's there. We're a little rough at the moment, but you can get the wood smell because we just had these dropped off the other day. So we got to put them on racks still. But most people don't realize when they're sitting up on the restaurant, they're actually sitting on top of the original cold room, which is now a barrel room. And it's starting to get a barrel funk to it.
So the barrel age deal is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it is.
You do one or two. I think we might have like 8. Let's see, there's 2, 3 stands, so I think it's 12. Just like that. Not bad.
So
this helps having a relationship, obviously, with the distillery.
it does. Because they legally are unable to reuse the barrels for bourbon. Bourbon has to be first fill, charred, new barrels for American bourbon. And so that's per law. So the winery will use some of the barrels occasionally. We take the majority of them, and we'll use them generally twice, sometimes three, depending on the beer. Sometimes only once if the beer is really different. Like we had an Imperial Brown that we didn't use most of those barrels again, just because of the difference that beer is going to put out. One of my favorite breweries is Firestone Walker as far as barrel aging goes, and I definitely, cut my teeth on their beers. And Sierra Nevada's got some great beers that are barrel aged. But Firestone's owned by Duval now, so everybody knows Boulevard. That's part of that conglomerate. Same with Ommegang. So there's a stand-up paddleboard hiding there, but
I was going to ask about the paddleboard.
We're not always brewing, so we got to take some breaks. It's just easier than we get the 6-pack, grab the board with the 6-pack. And then we've got our kegging system, 20 taps. We've got all stainless steel. And what's neat, you can see, is they're plastic kegs.
Yes.
These are all 8-gallon kegs. So they get about 65 pints. And, the goal is to be able to recycle. These go overseas a lot. And there's overseas that's required. So the inner lining is the only thing that's not 100% recyclable. But we've got a pretty good rainbow of colors. You can kind of see we've got 2 nitros that go through these fancy membranes that are really unique and expensive, but they're really cool because they work on a science of diffusion. So they diffuse nitrogen through the membrane into the beer, so you get the best nitrogen flavor. And then it kind of goes down the rainbow. We've got
Yeah, I mean it's really. Is that a sour? Or do you have
that's the Fruit of the Light that you had the other night.
Okay, yeah.
So that's our raspberry.
Really
It's 100 pounds of raspberry to about 100 pounds of beer, so a pound per gallon. Our light beer is one that looks like water right there. That's our Mountain Fork Light. It really is light.
It is very light.
So we get pretty busy up here. So we found a system to kind of keep the bar from running out of beer, and the whole tax determination line. So they keep all their canned beer up here so they can keep the upstairs stocked as well. But so we still got a little room to grow, and you can see some of the barrels go to double heights. So when we get everything double height, we have a little over 200 barrels in here.
Cost-wise on the plastic kegs,
They're in the long run, they're cheaper. Because you think about the fact that we're on a septic system, especially out here, and labor system for somebody to clean it, and chemical use to run through the kegs and all that stuff. In the long run, these are cheaper. A bar loves them because they don't have to send them back for deposits. They just get rid of them. So on contract, they're really inexpensive. And I definitely recommend any brewery that's looking to do any kind of distribution to look at plastic kegs. Maybe you keep stainless in your house because you want to do specialty stuff, and taking your spear out is nice if you're trying to do a specialty beer, but for anything outside the house, these plastic kegs are awesome. I've used the old stuff back in the day with cardboard and shenanigans, and so I'm one of the few people that have gone through the rigmaroles and the trials and tribulations, if you will. And they were always crazy, but these new ones, we have accidentally have them fall or different things, and they're very robust. The back of our tanks, we do our best to keep everything clean, so when it comes through, this little green thing that's kind of falling apart was always called our hoppy trail to start the tours on. We wanted people to be able to see, a clean brew house. We've got Goodyear equipment as far as the hosing goes, high quality hosing. The black pipe you see is all of our glycol for chilling the tanks. Most people don't know when they see the tanks, they're kind of, think of it like a Yeti. They have a space in between the walls, and this space is filled with coils, kind of like your radiator, so that we can keep that beer where we want it during fermentation, but then bring it down to 30 degrees when we need to carbonate it and chill it and finish it off. We'll walk you through the next little part that not everybody gets to see. But you'll see we definitely still have a lot of Brees in the house. Again, like I said, fanboy. We make, how many beers are we at right now? 26, Sam? So we generally have 13 different cans. Like I said, there's another 8 on draft, and then we usually have some of our barrel age projects that only go into bottles or cans. Like the Fremunda you had earlier was only a can release. So you know, we're getting close to 30 different beers that, you know, kind of come around, and trying to shrink that down. It is a little much.
Variety is the spice of life, but it can be
A challenging. Yeah, there's a reason people don't use turmeric. It makes everything orange. So different spices are not always the best. You can kind of see we built our second cold room with the ability to have storage space up underneath or above. Every brewery goes vertical, is always a joke with a brew house or a brewery owner. So you're always gonna have to have storage space, especially nowadays with the conflicts of getting material acquisitions. You really be able to have that safety net of you've got enough storage to brew your batches and run through everything. So because of that, we had to build a second cold room, and a large second cold room that helps us keep everything in supply. We were in Texas for a little while. We're in the middle of transitioning to what that could look like better. You know, Oklahoma from 2017 to now, 5 years later, has more than doubled. It's almost tripled the number of breweries, but that's still only like 80 breweries in the whole state. Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex is 120 just in that little, 2-hour drive. So, we're competing with that. And the last census report, 330 million people in America, and 36 million were in Texas, and 39 was California, the highest state. So, and Oklahoma was like 5, not even.
Yeah.
So Texas is a big market, but we get a lot of those folk come up here to visit, to fish. So this is more of our staging area with all of our specialty products. And then we go a little further. I don't think we're going to run out anytime soon there, partner.
How thick is that's a spray foam insulation?
We did a pink Panther, foam insulation that was 2 inches thick, and then we spray foamed over top of that. So it's probably closer to 8 inches total of insulation.
That's some good R value right there.
Yes, sir. And we really pushed that because I knew we needed it to keep this much product. Big refrigerator.
So as far as distribution wise, I mean, you mentioned maybe changing some things with Texas, but all over Oklahoma.
Yes, sir.
Everybody can have.
All they have to do is ask for Armada distribution. Armada is our guy. The owner of that company is a really alcohol enthusiast, especially beer. He recently signed on to Oklahoma craft brewer Frenzy Brewing. However, we've been with him since he took over the company, and he comes down pretty often. We'll see him again. There's a big festival in Oklahoma City Saturday, Oklahoma Craft Beer Fest at the fairgrounds, and so we'll all see him there and everything. But we really focus on that, and obviously we have a very large clientele that comes to us, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Having someone out there to kind of really fight for your brand and push your brand out there without getting caught in the shuffle of the domestic market is
And
huge.
we have a great sales guy up in Oklahoma City, Greg McGee, whose family actually owns the oldest Dairy Queen in Oklahoma. And he's actually up in Oklahoma City right now. There are several different bars we're with. Gastropub is one that was recently done. That was really a neat place if you ever get up there. There's another one that's a group that's part of Patriarch, The Joinery. They're a really neat concept, and they're really craft beer focused. So we've got some really good partners up there. McNelly's, I always got to mention that brand. That they own 9 different restaurant concepts, and they always have huge beer lists and portfolios and get beers in. So we've got some really good partners. And as of 2018, Oklahoma kind of opened the floodgates, if you will. The law changed. So we used to be the weird 3-2 state. And so as of into 2018, that law changed. So the last kind of 19 and 20, if not for COVID, would have definitely been a little more interesting. But so it slowed down that growth, which maybe was a good thing. However, after that law changed, floodgates opened. You know, we got New Belgium in, we got Stone in, we got all the people, because you weren't allowed to keep your beer on a cold cooler back in the old days in law. You had to be on the warm shelf. And so nobody that was a big craft beer was going to do that. Not in 2020. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Or 2018, 15, before the law changed. So once that law got changed, the floodgates opened, everybody came in, and we're seeing a lot more of those people. I think one that's kind of up in your area is Toppling Goliath. It's around, it's a national. They're trying to get more shelf space, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of them. They've got like Tyrannosaurus Rex and some weird name stuff, Toppling Goliath. Yeah. So as I mentioned to you earlier, our system's really easy to see that this side is the hot side and this side is the cold side. We are a 20-barrel brew house, and then behind us we have our mill. Every brewery has to have it separated, and what most people don't know why it's separated is because it has to be explosion proof. Grain dust is explosive, just like wood dust is. And so it's always going to be roomed out, but ours is pretty clean. We maintain a lot of that. We've got a fan in the exhaust for when it runs. If a brewery is not clean, it's difficult to make good beer. So I'm going to walk you up and see the rest of the brew deck proper. Sam, I think, is working on a beverage for you. But we do carbon filter and UV light. So our water is, really great. One of our key tags is from a good source comes a good beer. And that ties not only with our water, but like I said, with our hops and our grain. We start with key ingredients and just let them shine.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you don't think about that, but that's the majority of what beer is. I mean, what you're drinking, obviously, beer's what you've showed us so far, and what goes in here is going to be a solid, right?
There's just one more for you. This is the tagline of this show here. That is cream ale. So earlier when you had that from Mundo, I'll be interested to see kind of what I told you is this was I can hold it while you open it up and get a cameo of you for once.
Oh, no.
But it's got that old style Coors cream ale. Genesee was one of the originals, the red and green labels. But one of our owners really wanted just one more. And so we hadn't done a cream ale. Like I said, there's so many different beers in the BJCP, but not very many of them are light and easy, clean. We did that with some really easy hop profile, just to kind of accentuate the notes, but not really, make it anything. Wanted just to, because there's a lot of sugar in a cream ale. There has to be for it to be that way, but you need to be able to find that balance. So lawnmower beer.
Yeah, I could definitely have one or
just one more.
yeah. Just keep it going.
So you can see our hydrator, so we've got our hopper, and when it comes down, we'll open our gate valve, and there'll be a spray ball in this conical cone, and we'll introduce the water into the grain, and then we have a proper mixer, and if you pan down a little bit more, you'll see the steps in here.
Oh. Somebody get a go.
Oftenly.
Yeah.
So those are actually welded to my boot size. I had them installed when I got here. As
a lot of mashed potatoes in that thing.
you can do a lot of chili, mashed taters, or gumbo or something. But you notice the holes on the mixer because you don't want dough balls, and you don't want to. The other tricky part about mash, especially in the bigger systems, you don't want to shear your grain because then you ruin later your lauter. So you remember those old those old cartoons with the anthills and all the trails that go through an anthill, and you're looking at the glass.
Right.
That's what a lauter does. That's what lautering in the German term is, to filter. So if you mess all your grains up, you're never going to be able to create those anthill channels. And that increases the efficiency in the brew house when you can get more sugars out of all your grains.
Okay.
So that's why we also buy quality grains that have a higher sugar. In the brewing world, it's called DP. It's the amount of sugar profiles that are measured when they malt the grain. So it goes from that guy, and it goes into what I was saying, our lauter, which you'll see the false bottom on. Yep. So you'll see the tiny slits in here. So what that does is we pump over that whole 2,000 pounds of grain water slurry, and it will set on top of these. And these rakes, you can see your one side is different from the other side, as they cut different channels into the grain. And those channels, like the anthill things you're thinking of, allow that water to circulate through, so we can maximize our efficiency of the grain.
Pretty awesome.
And then Sam or I will also get into that one. There's one step in there. Sorry, phone booby trap. And it's a life-proof case. You can step on it. So we got to get in there, and we've got to pull the bottoms up. We got a pretty good spray ball system and get most of the grain out, but somebody's still got to get in and rub each rake, get all the little bits of grain off of it.
Is that the cleaner?
Well, that's our hose, but no, this is just a table at the moment. It was supposed to be a whole setup when they got here. It has a sight glass on it for passing stuff through, but part of my making the system work was cutting that out. So then the kettle proper, because they're all kettles, the proper kettle though is just a cone shape so that we can do the boiling in, and it's got the whirlpool breaker on the bottom. And you can see there are steps in there too. So we do go down in yonder.
Claustrophobia. I don't know. Somebody'd be shutting a hatch on me. I can see it. If those kind of shenanigans take place.
My background is actually submarine detail in the Navy. So I've had worse shenanigans.
Yes.
So
Well, thank you for your service. I'm glad you survived said shenanigans.
the old joke with brewing too is if you make 500 gallons of wort, you're going to use 4 to 5 times the same amount of liquid.
Right.
So this is our 2,000 gallon hot water tank. And then we've got a reservoir of glycol as well, feeding everything so we can have cold. And the chillers are outside, then feed this guy and run through all those black pipes. And I don't know if you saw the little tanks earlier, but we've got 4 little 150 tanks.
Yeah.
So when I mentioned the 100 gallons and 100 gallons of raspberry, those are where we do those at. When our barrels come out too, we can get 3 barrels in there and carbonate properly. One of my things is always making sure your beer is properly carbonated with barrel-aged beers, because you don't want a barrel-aged beer to be flat, because it just takes away the luxury. Doesn't need to be highly carbonated, but it needs to have some fizz.
Yeah, you got to find medium. You got to try to find it.
It very much is. But yeah, we've got an egress path on the back as well. When you're running around the brew deck, sometimes brewing shenanigans are what they are, and you're trying to get the beer done. So
how do you heat? Is it like steam?
yes, sir. So all that padding you see, the silver there, it comes from the boiler over yonder, the bluish green guy.
Yeah.
And so these are kind of like our tanks. These are double walled. And so this part is the single, but this part is the double. And those where it comes in right yonder there is the steam entrance. And so this one has 2 inlets, and the mash tun has 2 inlets as well for steam. That's the most efficient way. Some breweries will use direct fire and now electric. Electric is just too much of a hog, and direct fire is just a little temperamental. Steam is that, that 3 Goldilocks bear thing is just right. So using a boiler always has its tricks, but like I said, I was the old Navy boy. I'm used to running with a boiler, so stick with what I know. And you can see our BAF, proper company, spinning away, keeping us cool today. They're a great company.
Oh man, yeah.
It's our little shindig.
And what a great shindig it is. There you have it, folks. Mountain Fork Brewing Company, MFB. Special shout out to Johan and Sam there and their entire staff. Boom. There it is. One more beer. We appreciate their hospitality and showing us around. And if you like this kind of content, guys, you got to like this. Subscribe, ring the bell notification. And of course, if you're going to be in Southeast Oklahoma, go and give these guys a shout. Uh, Tell them you heard about us on the Real Life. Check out the brewery. They got a distillery. They've got a winery. I mean, this place is awesome. Anything and everything you can think of for your family to enjoy, Hochatown, Broken Bow area has it, both inside and out. It's a great family vacation destination. So that's going to do it for us here in Oklahoma. We're going to wrap it up. Real Life, checking out. Cheers.